Another week, another combo. In this video, we're going to be exploring the power of Heartless Summoning, a card with a long history in Modern. If you don't know it, it's a really simple card. Heartless Summoning gives all of our creature spells 2 less to cast. This means our Acererak? I don't know, this creature, it costs 1 black mana and that's all that matters. While this creature has a lot of text, we only care about the first half of the card. Essentially, for 1 black mana, it lets us venture into a dungeon and bounces back to our hand if we haven't completed the Tome of Annihilation. As there are 3 dungeons, we can venture into either of the other 2 dungeons and complete them, and our creature will still bounce back to our hand as we have not completed the Tome of Annihilation. Pair this with the Relic of Legends and we can play our Acererak, tap it for a mana, and then bounce it to our hand and replay it for free. This lets us infinitely venture into any dungeon and do its final room infinite times, winning the game. To support the rest of this deck and combo, we have many creatures with enter the battlefield effects and a lot of ways to generate a lot of mana. Sit back, subscribe, and enjoy this combo. To start the first round, we're on the play and we're against a Gigantha in the Companion Zone. Now this could either be 2 things, combo or aggro. Now we do have a Fatal Push Grief hand. With a Relic of Legends, I decide to take the risky keep and keep this and hope that they're on an aggressive deck and lean on the Fatal Push. I play a Polluted Delta, pass back the turn, and the opponent's on an aggro deck, so we are rewarded with this keep and we kill the Soulscar Mage. After Fatal Pushing and untapping, we top deck a Golos. This leans in for me wanting to play the Grief to prevent them from casting another creature and go Relic of Legends next turn and then Golos on turn 4. And after we Thoughtseize with the Grief, they only have a Swift Sphere, so let's take that and try and threat screw them. However, the opponent seems to be more of a beast than me as they rip Dragon Rage Channeler off the top, play their land, and ship back the turn. We're going to stick to our plan and play a Relic of Legends and just have to say go. On the opponent's upkeep, they do a ton of Surveil shenanigans using the Mutagenic Growths, Manamorphose, and Expressive Iteration to cantrip a ton and also bash in for a lot of damage. They then have a light up the stage and pass back the turn. We have to pray for a land, and a land we find. So now we can slam this Golos, and we don't even have to fetch because we have the Urborg in play to save us more life. Now if you don't know about the Cascading Catarrux Golos combo, Cascading Catarrux lets us put 5 mana into it and make 5 mana of any colors that we choose. Golos needs 7 mana where it's 2 of any color and 5 of the other colors, so what we can do is get 7 mana, filter it through the Cascading Catarrux and activate the Golos. This ended up not mattering because the opponent bolted me, used Light Up the Stage, found Underworld Breach, and as they have Mutagenic Growth in the graveyard, they can pump the Dragon Rage Channeler up to a lethal amount of damage. Going into boarding, Profane Tutor and Muldrifter are very slow, and then we board in 5 removal spells in replace for them. Going into game 2, we're on the play and we have the perfect opening hand. Not only do we have 2 removal spells where one is a sweeper, but we have Heartless Summonings turn 2 and a potential Golos on turn 3. The game starts off very slow with a land go from both players and they just bolt my face on my end step after playing Heartless Summonings. What's surprising is even though they didn't have a Spell Pierce for the Heartless Summonings, they just land go on their second turn, so we're just going to slam the Golos and see what they do. The Golos does resolve, so we're just going to get a Watery Grave to set up this Muldrifter. In the process of getting the Watery Grave, they did Lava Dart my face, but I'm not concerned about the board. The opponent continues to cantrip with an Expressive Iteration, and then they follow up with the Dragon Rage Channeler to try and put pressure on the board. From here, I decide to hardcast a Muldrifter, which finds an Acererak, which we venture into a dungeon. From here, we just attack with the Golos and Fatal Push the Dragon Rage Channeler when they try to pump it. The opponent then has a brutal follow-up with a Wear Tear to both destroy my Golos and destroy my Heartless Summoning. But like a beast, we rip Grief off the top of the deck. Now you could go for an Undying Malice play, but I'm just going to hardcast the Grief and then have Undying Malice up as a combat trick. The opponent then bolts my face in response, and we see their hand and take the Underworld Breach and leave them with an Expressive Iteration. We attack in for 2, and the opponent starts to build a big board with an Expressive Iteration and a third path, but because we have Path of Peril, we can just wipe the board and keep bashing. As we had so many cards more than the opponent, we had the sweepers, we had the removal, and the attackers, the opponent ended up conceding on the next turn because they just couldn't find anything. Going into the next game, on the draw, our hand is full of removal, so it's a snap keep, and the opponent doesn't have a creature to start off the game. Things are really slow this game. For some reason, the opponent just keeps land going, implying that they have some sort of counterspell holding up. So we just want to hit our land drops and keep passing back, but we get to the point where we want to slam the Relic of Legends and hope they don't have a counter. Fortunately, they do have the Pierce, but that does happen when they are just land going. Finally, after hitting their 4th land, they do play the 3rd path Ironclast, but we top deck a Grief like a beast. What we can do here is evoke the Grief so that we can discard a card from their hand and then Undying Malice in response to the evoke trigger so that when the Grief is sacrificed, it will come back and trigger again. but before the discard can even go through, the opponent casts a lava dart in response. As it's going to my face, I just let it resolve. The discard trigger does go through and we get to see their hand. It's just an Underworld Breach, so let's take that, and then Undying Malice. If they want to sacrifice 2 lands to make 2 1/1s, that will be perfect for me because we have the Path of Peril. The opponent ends up deciding to sacrifice 2 lands, which is perfect for us, so they make 2 1/1s with the 3rd path, and we pass back the turn. The opponent plays a land for turn, attacks in, and we play our Path of Peril, wiping the board. For the rest of this game, for 10 minutes in a row, it's just top decks versus top decks versus top decks. The opponent top decks a cantrip into a creature, I have the removal spell. Goes like this for on and on and on and on, but we end up getting to a really nice board with a Yawgmoth and a Grief. Now things seem good because the opponent had 0 cards in hand going into this turn, but of course they top deck an Expressive Iteration, which goes into more and more cantrips, and it looks almost hopeless for us to win this game. With 1 draw step left, we rip a Golos off the top of the deck like an absolute beast. Let's slam that, say go, and see if they can top deck out of this. Surprisingly, after top decking multiple Expressive Iterations, they finally draw a land and lose the game, and we manage to beat Prowess. Going into the next round, for some reason I forgot to put my recording software on and accidentally kept a really bad hand. But it didn't matter because of course we got paired against Burn again.
Just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Yeah, surprisingly I lost game 1 to double Eidolon even though we almost got the combo going, and then in game 2 we just got crushed by normal burn things. Things weren't really going our way this league. We had multiple spots where we had ways to set up the combo, but the opponents could just disrupt the combo because 1 removal spell can disrupt us and stop us from going infinite with the dungeons. Here's a great example against Yawgmoth in round 3, where I got really close game 1, but we just couldn't quite get there. Now I also want to say this was my first time playing with this combo, so I'm not surprised if I made a lot of mistakes along the way. We ended up getting crushed by Yawgmoth because they had Necromentia to name our Aceratar, whatever you want to call it, exiling it from our hand and our deck, and then just beating us down with a load of creatures. I was finding that because our combo needed so many creatures to come together to be able to win, it became really awkward when the opponent had any form of disruption to our hand or to our board. It was really awkward to navigate. However, things went a lot better for us in round 4 on the play, and we keep a very nice opening hand with 4 lands, a removal spell, and a Grief. The game started off nicely for us because the opponent was on Merfolk, so we could push their dockhand, we top deck a Muldrifter, but importantly on turn 3 we found an Undying Malice so that we could Grief and then reanimate it to discard 2 cards. From here we managed to see their hand, we just took 2 big bombs, and then for the rest of the game the opponent got so unlucky. From that spot, the opponent drew a land for every draw step of the game, and as we were drawing creatures, could draw with Muldrifter, we top deck Griefs, we just kept discarding their hand, and they couldn't do anything, and we just used the attack game plan for the first game. After blowing out their block with an Undying Malice, we moved on to game 2. Going into game 2, I sided out the clunky Profane Tutors, the slow Muldrifters, and brought in removal spells, Thoughtseizes, and Disruption. Game 2 didn't go as well as game 1. We kept a very risky opening hand because we had the Yawgmoth and a load of lands, but the opponent started off with a dockhand and we found a Thoughtseize. The game ended up being very awkward because I ended up blocking with a Golos, and with the opponent having 2 cards in hand, one of them was a Veldarian Hexcatcher, blowing me out, killing the Golos, and making my life very awkward. We ended up losing game 2 because the opponent just had too much pressure and too much interaction. Going into the third game, we kept a really nice opening hand, and the opponent has a Shaper Sanctuary to start off the game. Now things look really good for us when the opponent has a Veldarian Hexcatcher and we top deck a Heartless Summoning, allowing me to play the Heartless Summoning and then Yawgmoth the Veldarian Hexcatcher. What's nice about this is that even though they managed to refill the board quickly, we have a Golos to follow up with and a Cabal Coffers so that we can make a ton of mana. Now the problem is, I was very scared of Spreading Seas here, so what I decided to do is fetch an Urborg so that I can play the Cabal Coffers and try to bait the opponent to Spreading Seas the Urborg or the Cabal Coffers instead. But if they Spreading Seas the Cataracts, I'm gonna be in trouble. After playing our Cabal Coffers and passing, the opponent does have the Tide Shaper. But to my luck, they targeted the Urborg! I have no clue why, but they targeted the Urborg, we managed to bait them, so now we can not only play the Urborg and sacrifice the Island Urborg, so now they don't have Island Walk, but we have our Golos combo. From here, I just activated Golos every single turn, drawing 3 cards a turn, getting loads of removal spells, blocking everything. We had it all to beat the opponent. It was a very sick round against Merfolk. I ended up setting up the Heartless Summoning combo, but I just ended up attacking them for lethal to save time. For our third round, I'm not really sure what the opponent kept. They're on hammer time and they cast no spells up to turn 3, so we ended up just assembling the combo turn 3 and the opponent couldn't do anything, so we could infinitely go through the dungeons, but to save time I just discarded their whole hand, made a huge board, and drew a load of cards. Throughout this video and this league, I found it very difficult to really do this combo. I already said earlier, but one removal spell, one discard spell, one enchantment removal spell completely took you off the train tracks and made things really awkward. I will reiterate, this is my first time playing with the deck, so I wouldn't be surprised if I missed some intricacies and made a lot of mistakes, but to be fair, the power level of the deck really wasn't carrying. And this showed because in game 2, I drew multiple Shriekmaws against their whole artifact board, which is probably poor sideboarding, and then in game 3, they just beat me down with the fair plan. I think it's really difficult to play the fair plan against Modern right now because you're casting Griefs and Mulldrifters, whereas everyone else is attacking you down, killing you, casting removal spells. It's just really awkward. Overall, I thought the deck was decent, but not really that amazing, just because it's so easy to interact with and getting 3 cards on the table is very difficult. Shout out to my Discord for recommending this deck to me. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out this video because YouTube thinks you'll like it. No chests today because we did only 2-3.